If it weren't for the fear of loneliness, there's a good chance that Charles Darwin would have never come up with his theory of evolution. Let me explain. So in 1831, an English naval officer named Robert Fitzroy received word that he was going to be the new captain of the HMS Beagle. As somebody who wanted to be a captain all of his life, he was very excited. But he was also a little bit worried. And that's because his predecessor, the captain before him, killed himself at sea because of about 3 or 4 weeks of loneliness and depression. In order to prevent his own loneliness, Captain Fitzroy asked a friend to reach out to some of his friends and try to find a civilian naturalist that could come alongside him on the trip. The first person that he reached out to said yes at first, but then when he told his wife he'd be at sea for 2 years, she said no. The second person that he reached out to said yes and got so far as to pack his bag and get ready for the trip. But then when he told his wife, she also said no, he couldn't go. And that's how a 22-year-old, fresh out of college, Charles Darwin received the opportunity of a lifetime. In December 1831, the HMS Beagle set sail, and Charles Darwin, Captain Fitzroy, and the rest of the crew traveled around the world for the next 5 years. They traveled to what is now Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and then up to the Galapagos, where Charles Darwin studied the birds that would become so famous in his theory of evolution. Along the way, Darwin took meticulous notes, collected birds, and made observations that would shake his belief in the existence of God. Slowly, he began to believe that a lot of the existing literature on how the Earth was formed and how species evolved was probably wrong. In 1836, he got back to England and wrote down in his diary that he thought maybe species weren't fixed, but they would actually change over time. Over the next 30 years, Darwin took his notes to leading biologists and geologists around England. And then in 1859, he published his famous Origins of Species, which argued that all species compete for survival. Within a decade, most scientists accepted his theory as fact, and that completely changed how people thought about everything from God to biology to geology, and even our culture and how we treat each other as humans. In the 20th century, tons of people used and abused this theory of evolution. At its worst, some people used this theory of evolution to justify things like racism. But Darwin's theory was abused in more subtle ways too. I think one of the best examples of this is the justification for this hyper-individualistic culture that I think defines the 20th and 21st century. But the irony, of course, and this is really what I think is so interesting about this story, is that if it weren't for the fear of loneliness, if it weren't for that desire for connection and cooperation that so many humans have, Darwin may have never found his theory of evolution in the first place. Even Darwin believed that humans were at their best when they cooperated and had sympathy for other people. The last book that he ever wrote was called Descent of Man, and in it, he argues that the thing that helped humans develop the most was not their hyper-individualism and their competitiveness, but actually the thing that set them apart from almost every other animal, and that was their ability to sympathize with other people and to cooperate with them. And I think that that is the ultimate lesson of Darwin's research, that humans are not, as Thomas Hobbes said, selfish beasts, but instead animals who cooperate, animals who are compassionate, and animals who love each other. As always, I'd love to hear what you think about this story and some of the ideas in this video. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and thanks for watching.